Hey everyone, my name is Carlos and I'm the founder and CEO of Product School. And today we have a very special guest with us. Special because I met her over a year ago, although I've been following her for a while. Her name is Tatyana Mamut and she's the Chief Product Officer at Nextdoor. Hey Tatyana.
Hello, Carlos.
Thank you for joining the show.
I'm delighted to be here.
So I want to dig in all things product, leadership, diversity, and everything in between. Let's start from the beginning. Why don't you tell us a bit more about your own personal story?
Yeah, well, if you want to start at the beginning, we would have to start in Eastern Ukraine, where I was born. I was born in a, very, interesting family. My father's family was Jewish. My mother's family was Russian. Everyone in my family was an engineer. My mother was an engineer. My father was an engineer. My grandmother was an engineer. And we lived in a one-room communal apartment, which meant that we didn't have a kitchen or a bathroom in our apartment. We lived in kind of a dorm room kind of situation, the whole family in one room. And we immigrated as political refugees when I was 4 years old with my family. My grandfather had been imprisoned under Stalin. And so when the United States was starting to let in Russian Jews who were political refugees, we were one of the first families who came. We lived in New York. We lived in Section 8 housing on welfare for a while until my parents learned English and found a little bit of English and found a job there. My father still doesn't really speak English. I think that has really shaped a lot of how I think about products, right? I come at product development from a truly global perspective from the very beginning. And, my parents were very, very, very disappointed that I did not become an engineer. And I was the black sheep in the family. My brother thankfully became a software engineer. So at least they had that going for them. But I was always more interested in human beings and how humans worked as opposed to how machines worked, right? The human system, especially human society, is just as interesting a product to me in many ways as any kind of mechanical or man-made thing. So I always wanted to learn about social studies, human interaction, economics. And so I became an economics major in college, which my parents were kind of okay with because as long as there was a lot of calculus and mathematical modeling, they were okay with my major in college. And I wanted to be an investment banker. And so I interned on Wall Street for 2 summers. And I loved the work, and I really did not like the culture. And I just did not meet a single person on Wall Street that I aspired to be like, to be quite frank. This was the mid-1990s. This was a lot of the times when investment banking was really coming into its own, was becoming like the smartest guys in the room type of culture. And that culture just did not appeal to me at all. And ironically, I went into advertising after college and into global advertising. And I worked at a global ad agency called Leo Burnett, where I worked in Chicago, London, and then they sent me to Moscow to lead brand planning in Russia. And this was, the early 2000s, just as right after the financial collapse in Russia. And Russia was really starting to think about how do we develop meaningful brand experiences in order to connect with the Russian market and the Russian culture in a unique way, right? Before that, a lot of advertising in the Russian market was really focused on taking ads from the United States or from Western Europe and simply dubbing them into Russian. And that didn't really work very well. And so I founded the brand planning discipline, which was really around, understanding, the culture, understanding Russians, and then helping take that insight, translating that insight into communication strategy, and then working with our clients, like Procter & Gamble is actually my biggest client in Russia, working with our clients to really craft the right brand messages, the right communications, and also start to adapt the products themselves for the Russian market. So some of the things that we found were like just for Tide detergent, right? Our experience of Tide detergent in the United States is so inappropriate for Russia, right? What we do is we get into our big SUV We drive to the Costco. We buy like a 5-gallon tub of Tide. We put it back in our SUV. We bring it downstairs to our basement, and then we wash our clothes in our large personal washing machine. That is not how Russians live, right? Most Russians don't have a car. They shop for their, groceries and for everyday items at a local kiosk. The kiosk is like literally the size of a room. It's not a huge supermarket. And everything that they bring home, they have to carry by hand in a satchel to a large apartment building, go up several flights of stairs, often carrying the bags. And then many of them, at least at the time I was there, still wash their clothes by hand. So Tide, the Tide product, needed to be fundamentally rethought, redesigned, repackaged, repriced, and then again, only then could we figure out the right advertising for, to really bring into the Russian market. So it was that sort of understanding of how human culture, human needs, human context fits in with product development that brought me to IDEO, where IDEO, of course, is a very large innovation agency. And by very large, I mean a couple hundred people around the world. But it was an incredible place where there was a ton of creativity. Our clients came to us trying to create the new innovative product. And I joined IDEO in 2007. In 2007 was when the iPhone came out. And so it was a really exciting time to be at IDEO, because all of a sudden our clients started asking not for, hard products, right? Not like mechanically engineered products, not electrically engineered products, but products that were fundamentally digital and digital first in their experience. And there weren't a lot of people at IDEO at the time who knew a lot about digital experiences. I had been lucky enough to have been the first project manager. I think that we called it project coordinator at the time at Leo Burnett, to create Leo Burnett's first website ever, 1997 we started building Leo Burnett's very first website, and I was the project manager on that. So I kind of knew something about digital stuff. And so I raised my hand and I said, I'll lead these big digital projects. And so I started leading digital projects for, Visa, for, Genentech, for, very large global companies, and leading these projects around the world. So for Visa, I think my teams and I traveled to a total of 15 countries over 5 years to really understand how people were using money around the world, and also worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I was in Kenya in 2008 for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation when something incredible happened, which was M-Pesa took off. So M-Pesa was the first kind of digital money, like the first big digital money platform. And the reason it took off was because there was a lot of social unrest. And so people started to use this Safaricom innovation to send money to themselves and their families as they were fleeing the violence, the post-election violence across the country. And it was a very interesting thing because I was there on the ground as this was happening. I was hearing more and more stories of people using and adopting M-Pesa. I became a mobile money expert, right, in digital money, because who else was on the ground to actually experience this and witness it and understand how digital currency adoption really happens from a firsthand perspective. And so then I was involved with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help figure out strategies for mobile money adoption around the world, as well as with the Institute for Money, Technology, and Financial Inclusion at UC Irvine. So had a whole bunch of stuff there that we can dive into. And then I started the organizational design practice at IDEO, where I really worked with organizations and CEOs to help transform their companies to be more innovative, right? So instead of kind of hiring IDEO to create the innovation project and then being like, okay, client, you're on your own to develop it, our practice really focused in on what we called change by doing, right? Like partnering with organizations to not just design the products, but to see the organization as a product itself that we could redesign so that the people, the processes, the systems actually became more innovative, so that when IDEO stepped out, the organization could continue the product innovation on its own. So did that for several years. There was a lot of, great experience from that. Helped to transform several companies, one of which had a huge acquisition exit based on their innovation premium by the time they'd been working with IDEO for a while. And then I went to Salesforce. So Salesforce in 2014 was looking for someone to really help lead design-led transformation in its product. And so I came in a very strange role, actually, and then ended up the Lightning Experience redesign, which was the biggest redesign of the Salesforce product in its history. That was between 2014 and 2016. And you can kind of see where the Salesforce product has gone from that. Everything now is pretty much Lightning Experience, and that was a great opportunity. And then Salesforce was investing in a new technology and a new product, the Internet of Things cloud, the IoT cloud. And so I was the first kind of front end leader that was brought into that. The kind of technology had been built on the back end. And then they were like, well, what is this, user experience is going to be? What should the front end look like? And so I actually started in the design world at Salesforce, but then coming over to the IoT cloud, we really needed someone who was not just a design leader, but also who can actually lead the front end product vision as well. So I started taking on more and more product responsibilities. And then interestingly, a few of the product managers on the team raised their hands and said they wanted to report to me. So then I started managing product managers, which was awesome. And then I went over to AWS because the person who I've been working for on IoT Cloud actually went over to AWS to start something new. And, I was like, well, this sounds exciting. Like, can I come with you? And so he was like, yes. So he and I wrote the first PR FAQ for what is now Honeycode. It's launched, so I can talk about it now. And it was AWS's foray into going beyond developers who could code and building a product for business users. So wrote the PR FAQ, put together the product plan, got the resources together, grew the team from the two of us to 150 in a year and a half. And then I managed at AWS the entire front-end team. So design, product management, and also front-end engineering, which was a really interesting experience for a non-engineer. But I learned a ton, and I did an okay job in that a lot of the engineers who worked for me, still kind of continue to reach out and say, hey, do you have anything interesting at Nextdoor? I'd be really interested in working with you or for you again. So that, seems to have worked out okay. After AWS, I started to really think about new technologies, emerging technologies, especially blockchain. And left, it was, early 2018 to advise a couple of blockchain companies. And then I had this incredible opportunity to join Nextdoor. So joined Nextdoor, and I've been there for about a year and a half.
Well, I have so many questions to ask you, Tatyana. Well, the first thing, it seems like engineering is the only thing you haven't done. So who knows, maybe at some point. But I really love your background and all the different opportunities that you took. Like the pattern that I recognize from hearing your story is that you raised your hand. You were the first mover in many opportunities. Even you might not know all the variables, but I think by being there and being curious enough to figure things out, that probably opened more and more doors.
That's exactly right. So one of the things about, I think, my career is always being there and always raising your hand and saying, I will figure this out. Like, even if I'm not I'm not an expert right now, if there isn't an expert in the room, I will be the one to figure it out. And so I think that's right. I also think the other thing about me and my perspective is that I really think the hard problems in technology today are not fundamentally technology problems. They're human problems. They're human behavior problems, right? How do you build a product that people will love? And how do you bring together a team that will work together to build that thing, right? Those are the hard problems that we are here to solve as product leaders. The technology problems, I've always had great technology partners, right? Great VPs of engineering, great CTOs that I've partnered with, who can solve those problems. But as product people, our biggest, hardest problems are the human problems.
I agree. And now, especially when you are at a C level, which I think is very important for everyone in product to recognize that now finally we see more chief product officers with direct report to the CEO. So this is not just as a function of technology or marketing. So I want to learn from your own experience. What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So, a lot of people like, so I get asked this question a lot. And, at the high level, what I do is I ask a lot more questions than I provide answers. So, my job is to really not come up with the what should we build anymore, right? When you're a product manager, and the reason a lot of people went into product management is because they are very passionate about the what should we build, right? When you're at the level that I'm at now, it's less about what we should build and more about, the why are we building what we're building, or why are we prioritizing what we're prioritizing? It's about the who are the right people and the right teams to really get us to our organizational goals, to our company goals. It's the when question, like, how do I set deadlines appropriately for my team so that they have the right constraints, so they're not too constrained, right? They can still think big, they can still go after the big ideas, but they're constrained enough so that they're executing at the highest efficiency possible, right? Those are the questions that I focus on as a CPO. It's really, who is on the team? Do I have the right people on the team? Have I given them the right deadlines? And am I asking the right questions about why are we doing this? Who are we creating this for? And, when they come up with an idea, right? When the teams bring me an idea, I ask those questions again. Who are we designing this for? Why do we know that they will value this, right? How will we monitor the progress toward the goal, right? How will we know we're successful? So again, it's as you move up the trajectory in your product career, you focus less and less on the what, the specific what's, and you focus more and more on these other questions.
And I'm always curious to ask this to CEOs or chief product officers, because obviously you have strong opinions about your product. It's your baby, right? So how do you stop yourself from getting too into the weeds and make sure that when you're asking those questions, it is the CPO at Nextdoor and not Tatyana, the product person who loves just using a product?
It is, I will be completely honest, it is really hard. It is really, really, really hard. And, I do, dive very deep sometimes with my teams. So our product development process includes a couple of places where I get to be creative and intervene as well. So we have, we develop insights. We write a PRFAQ draft. The PRFAQ is, the press release and frequently asked questions. It's kind of a take on Amazon's process for customer-obsessed product development. We don't write PRDs or MRDs. We write PRFAQs. And then we do a charrette. And a charrette is a collaborative, cross-functional work session where we bring together product managers, designers, the insights team, the marketing team, the go-to-market, the revenue team, the engineers, right? To really think about what kind of ideas can we build that really meet these jobs to be done of our customers that we've identified in the early research. And then we go into kind of the deeper experimentation and, deeper PRFAQ writing, the spec writing and all of that, and the UX design. And so I get to intervene in these charrettes. So I'm always like, are you having a charrette? Make sure I'm included, right? So and I'm just a participant in the charrette, but I get to insert my ideas, right? Just as an equal. And then the other place is even before that, in the insights phase, I spend at least 2 days a month actually running our research. So the our insights team is, pretty small, and I help augment them. So our head of insights will often put me to work, hand me a discussion guide. And, pre-COVID, I would go out, I would travel to, Sweden or Denmark or, Atlanta or Santa Monica or Oakland, wherever they wanted to send me. And I would actually conduct the research. And one of the reasons why is I want to continue to keep my empathy for our customers and our members really top of mind and really fresh, right? And from that, I can have more product intuition. So I spend at least 2 days a month doing that. And then the other place where I get to intervene is in the peer FAQs. So we have peer FAQ reviews together as a product team. For any new feature that's being developed, we review it all together as a team. And so I'm a voice. I'm a fairly strong voice in that process. And every once in a while, I will just throw in my own PR FAQ if I have an idea. So, and I will bring it to my product team just as any other product manager would.
And I'm sure that the fact that you've traveled so many places and worked and lived in so many different places, and also being part of so many different incredible companies, you probably absorbed and made you more empathetic and pick the things that you liked and kind of to co-create your own playbook. So I'm curious to know, what is your philosophy around building a great product team?
Yeah, so suppose a product is the place that I believe needs to hold empathy at the highest, level. And what I mean by empathy is empathy for users, customers, if users and customers are different groups, but then also empathy for the different functions in an organization to really understand how to build a product, right? Also what product to build, but also how to kind of bridge the empathy gap and how to build the right product. And so the way that I construct product teams is based on a rule of thirds: 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So many product teams have folks with an engineering background, right, who really understand the technical sides, right, of how to find the right product to build. So I do have on my team about 1/3 of my product managers have some sort of technical background, right, to really help the team understand when we're reviewing the PR FAQs, right, they're the voices that really advocate from a technical perspective. Then 1/3, I have people with business backgrounds, right, to really understand the business model and the business implications of any product that we're willing to build. And again, in the reviews, like, those people partner with the other product managers to really understand kind of the business in and outs of how to make a product successful. And then the other 1/3, and I would say this is the secret sauce of my product teams, and if your product teams aren't aligned this way, I would inspire you to think about what you might be missing, are social scientists. So people with anthropology, sociology, history degrees. And those social scientists are incredibly important because they help to understand, and they also have extremely, extremely important technical knowledge around how human behavior and human motivations work, so that they can help other product managers really understand how to focus, how to hone, and how to design their product experiences so that they have the best chance of adoption and usage, because that's really what it's all about. So earlier this morning, our product team had a discussion around Mark Granovetter's work on the strength of weak ties. One of our product managers with a background from sociology presented that, and that is going to help us really understand and unlock a lot of our kind of thoughts around what kind of products can we build to really unlock the power of weak ties in a neighborhood and in a social network environment. So that's how I think about creating product teams: 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3.
Well, and I'm so glad to hear that, because first of all, I come from an engineering background, so I think like your family. I was supposed to be a doctor, but I get so scared when I see blood that I was good enough with numbers, and that's how it started. But I wish someone had told me something about this empathy. Or let's start with public speaking, human interaction, because that's what I apply almost every day. Not just at work, but I think in life, and independently of what anyone studied. I wish there was more talk around feelings, emotions, and how to actually communicate and influence others, especially if what you want is to lead. I haven't seen many structures that have that component. Usually a lot of engineers that become PMs or business people. I'm a huge advocate of more designers, but from now on, I think that what you mentioned, sociologists, user researchers, people who really get people, are so important.
I would agree. So a lot of our designers actually also have a sociology or anthropology background. So I do have designers with that background come into product management. But it's really the understanding of humans, right, that we're looking for in that 1/3, right? And humans Not just like, oh, I'm a human. So I mean, it's so funny to me because I have a PhD in anthropology, and it's funny to me how people think that they understand humans just because they've been a human being and have been around humans. That would be like my 10-year-old saying that she knows a lot about iOS development because she's been using an iPhone for the last, few years. Just because you use an iPhone doesn't mean you know really the mechanics and the deep understanding of how this works, right? And so anthropologists, sociologists, social scientists have deep understanding and a lot of knowledge around how human beings behave and what makes for human desirability of different product experiences and how to set up products for the best chance for adoption that you don't get just by being a human being. So it's not just about influence within an organization, it's actually designing the right product, right? Because unless you're designing your product only for the adoption by other technologies, if you're designing a product for people that people need to buy and use, right, you need to have partners at least, or you yourself need to have an understanding of human beings and how to create human desire.
And I'm curious, is there any difference in that mix or anything else when you build B2B products versus B2C?
And so I actually have crossed the threshold many times between B2B and B2C. And I can tell you from experience, there is very little difference. There's some difference in kind of the implementation, the A/B testing, right? There's a lot more constraints on A/B testing in a B2B environment in many ways. Other than that, as long as you're designing a product for people, as long as people are your customers, as long as people are your users, the processes and methodologies that work for designing a product that is adopted and used within a work context are very similar to the frameworks and the thinking and the process for creating products that are designed and used in a personal life process. But you need to have the people who understand how to model those life worlds slightly differently, right? Because in an organizational environment, there's going to be a different systems of adoption versus in a personal environment. There are going to be different systems of adoption. So you just need people who understand how to model out those different cultural systems, and then it's pretty much the same.
So you're also been in very different environments. You mentioned Wall Street earlier in your career and how you didn't like that culture very much. You've traveled, you've been in B2B, B2C. So when it comes to creating your own leadership style, first of all, who did you learn from? And what are some of the highlights that you think are important for great leaders?
So I was exceptionally lucky, I would say. I had the two most incredible bosses coming out of college at Leo Burnett, who continue to be my mentors and friends today. T. Scott Edwards, I'll just call them out by name because they're so fabulous. He became then the CMO of HP and Gateway Computers. So, pretty amazing person. And one of the very first, I remember one of the very first meetings I had with him, I was, 22 years old, had just been out of college. I was on the business development team. So I was one of the people who was like running new business pitches all the time. And I was, and I was taking notes, right? Because I'm like a young person, like I'm taking notes. And then after the meeting, I said to him, I had an idea for how we can actually, develop this ad. And he said, the next time you have an idea like that and you don't say it in a meeting, you're fired. So he is a wonderful person, right? But like his point was like, speak up in the meeting. Anytime you have something valuable to say, don't self-censor, don't silence yourself, speak up. And so that was incredible. And then my second boss, he introduced me to my second boss, Brenda Williams. And she was, she ran a brand innovation studio and consulting firm within Leo Burnett. And she's a force of nature. She is brilliant and outgoing. And again, she would just push me. She would just like throw me into situations knowing that I had no expertise in the area. Like she threw me when I was, again, 24 years old. And we had a big workshop with Kellogg's executives. And I'd never run a workshop before, a brand workshop before. And she was like, I need you to run this workshop. And I was like, I mean, it's like the CEO of Kellogg's is coming. Like, how am I going to run this workshop? She's like, you'll figure it out. And she would just like, again, throw me in. I mean, she would give me the tools and, she was very supportive and very helpful, but just throw me in the deep end and see when I would sink, right? When would I sink? And I didn't sink. And it's a lot because of her and her kind of confidence in me. And I think, so those two people, I think, are the really foundational for helping me understand that great leaders, right, really see value in, in people who are up and coming, and they just give them more and more and more. And like, how do you create a culture and an environment where you just help people rise as quickly as possible, right? And I try to do that with my teams, right? How do I help people rise as quickly as possible?
And I think the fact that you're still in touch with them now as friends and mentors speaks a lot about yourself, your personality, because you met a long time ago when you were in a very different position, and you still want to, stay in touch with the people that marked your life.
I think that human connection is a really important thing, right? Yes, we need to network and all those types of things, but people are really valuable in and of themselves, regardless of the position that they're in. Like, when you find someone that you really connect with and that shares a worldview with you, I mean, hopefully you'll be helpful to each other, but even just having that support from the other person is really helpful. So stay connected at a personal level.
So I'm also curious to know what's next for you in terms of learning. What are you curious about these days?
So I am curious about all things. So my curiosity around blockchain, the reason I left AWS and kind of went into blockchain, it was a very different moment. I actually think that back in, 2017, 2018 was kind of like blockchain was kind of like the internet was in like the very early 90s. Nobody really knew what to do with this new thing. I still see a lot of very interesting use cases springing up everywhere around blockchain. And I do think there's the potential for the creation of completely new business models, unlocking blockchain. Like, one of the most interesting companies I know right now is, other than Nextdoor, of course, is Brain Trust. So if you don't know it, it's usebraintrust.com. And they're really creating, based on a blockchain-based system, a new way for people to take control of their financial lives and their careers. It's not it's hard to describe because it's not gig economy, it's not freelance work. It's a way for really highly skilled people to take on projects and actually have something that really feels like a career project-based work, but really be in control of their time, of their place, and also earn equity in the network through this blockchain system, which is really unique, right? Which is a lot of freelancers, especially developers, product managers, designers, right? The value that you get if you go to a big tech company is you get the equity, right? You don't get that if you get the freedom as a freelancer, but you don't get the equity. This is actually bridging those two things. So again, I just think blockchain is really nascent. It still needs a lot of unlocks to find out what is the real value that we can create with this new technology. And it's a place that I still spend a bit of time on.
So switching gears a little bit, I want to bring up a very important topic, which is diversity and inclusion. Nextdoor is the community that builds the community. So it's also a very meta term, but internally for yourself, what do you think, or what do you do to make the workplace more diverse and inclusive?
Yeah, so I think that it's really, we think about this a lot, and we actually kind of push on this a lot, right? So at the foundation, I think it's incumbent on us as product leaders to make sure that the people making decisions about the product reflect the people that we're serving, reflect our customers, both current and future customers. And that's why we really, it's a business decision to make sure that we have those views represented of the people who are our current customers and our future customers on our product team, and not just on our product team, but making the critical decisions around the product. And so that's really fundamentally the philosophy that I bring into hiring is, do I have the perspectives on the team to make the right decisions for the product both now and in the future, right? And where we strategically know that we want to go. So, we're a global product. Nextdoor is a global product. We're in, 11 countries around the world. And so it's critically important that we have a very global perspective. And fortunately, we do. Even just on my product leadership team, our heads of product across our different areas, there's a lot of diversity. There's people from Latin America, from Europe, from Asia. There's people with very, very different backgrounds, and that includes racial diversity. It includes socioeconomic diversity, people from very different financial backgrounds, and includes geographic diversity, making sure that we have people who understand, right, how cultures are different around the world, so that when we're making those product decisions, that knowledge comes into the room, right? That knowledge needs to be in the room, or else the decisions are going to be myopic.
I think that's so key, because sometimes we think about diversity in terms of just gender diversity. And there's so many ways we can think about this question. And I also believe that the only way to really try to solve it is to be part of it. So if everyone is thinking the same way, it's going to be very hard to empathize with so many other different groups. So I know at the beginning it's hard, because you probably had to work extra hard to identify the candidates that would make a diverse and inclusive team. But hopefully, as we make those early decisions, there's more inertia for the next generations.
Yeah. So one thing I would say about the diversity of perspectives, I think you do need to make sure that you have a diversity of gender, race, socioeconomic status or background, as well as geographic diversity, right? People from different countries, different cultural conceptions. I mean, if you just look at the United States, right, you can see, right, that there is a divide in terms of how people think in the United States, how people perceive the world in the United States. And so was really important for me to make sure that we had at least a few people from the American South on the product team, and making very high level product, not just on the product team, but like we're product decision makers, right? Because without that background and that deep empathy and that deep understanding, you just don't have the person in the room, right? And I especially thought it was important to have, folks from an African-American background also making critical product decisions in the room, because otherwise, how would we even know what we don't know, right? And so I do think it's really critically important to understand that when you look around the room, right, that the people who are making decisions in the conference room look, speak, think, have empathy for the people that are your customers, and that you want to be your future customers. That is very, very important.
I remember you mentioned the advice that one of your previous managers gave you around speaking up. I've seen so many amazing, I would say, engineers, just because I come from that world, and I know that we weren't taught to speak up. But not just that, I've seen amazing women and so many other different groups that are great, and people need to know about it. So how would you encourage people who really don't have the title and think that don't deserve to share ideas or really raise the hand, as you did very often in your career, to really take one step forward and try to position themselves and add value?
Yeah, I would say, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So I think that's a hard one. I mean, I think that there's, let me just be clear. It's not that I haven't faced setbacks, right? I've faced, some discrimination, some harassment in my background. And so I definitely understand what it feels like to feel intimidated, to be the only woman in the room, to be the only female voice in the room for years often, and how much that weighs on your ability to speak up, how much that fact alone creates a context in which you would just rather not speak up at all because you just don't know what the response will be. Often it's even worse when you're ignored, even if you're not attacked. So I get that. And there's two things that I would say. If one, try to find an ally who is often in the room with you, who will help amplify your voice, right? Can you find someone? It can be a man, absolutely. I've had a situation several times where a man in the room had said like, and what she said, I agree with. Let me restate it again in my masculine voice so that the rest of you will hear it. I've definitely seen that happen. And that, in fact, has happened to me in the past with a male VP who would do that again and again and again when he felt that my voice was not heard in the room. He would be like, and, let me make a point. And they'd be like, oh, that's a really good point. And be like, yeah, Tatyana just said that. So I just want to point that out. So try to find an ally, try to work with that person, someone who really believes in you, who's on your team, maybe your boss, maybe it isn't, but somebody who's an ally who will amplify your voice and see if that helps. The other thing is write long emails. This is one of the other things that I did is when I had a point of view and I felt like I was not being heard, sometimes in a meeting you have like, a few seconds of conversation, right? Because you don't want to take up the whole space. And write a long email, right? And really like read that email again and again, make sure it's really great, and then send it off to the decision makers, right? That can be incredibly effective, right? If the verbal communication isn't working, if you are getting drowned out or you feel uncomfortable, try email communication, but make sure those emails are really great. And finally, if nothing is getting through and you feel not confident, the environment is not one that is conducive to including your voice, look for another job. I mean, honestly, the world is big. Everyone needs great talent. So if you're not being appreciated where you are, the world is your oyster, right? You are valuable. You provide a valuable perspective. Find a place that will value that perspective and that will value your voice.
Well, this is a beautiful ending to this interview. It's been a pleasure to learn with you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think, one of the things around product is, it's our responsibility. We're creating the future, right? Product management is the function that is building the future, right? Because so much of the future, almost all of it, right, is going to come through technology in one way or the other. So please take that responsibility seriously. Please think about our ethical responsibilities. What is the type of future that you are building in your day-to-day job, and really come at it from that perspective. So that is probably the last word I'll leave everybody with.
Thank you so much, Tatyana.
Thank you.